Hello, 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 and welcome back to the Premier Chelsea, your source for all things Premier League, but starting with Chelsea first. It's been a while. We've been busy. Our personal lives have kept us busy. Jackie is not with me today, but to celebrate a massive win and a win in the London Derby, I've pulled in a big gun. Feroze, welcome back. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Good to be back. Appreciate you for having me, and I'm glad to be back for this episode, especially what happened.
Yeah, no, look, Feroz and I were messaging over the weekend. We were trying to do a preview to the game. Uh, Things didn't work out, but this worked out, and this worked out very well for us today. So let's jump into it. Chelsea win 4-1 away from home to Tottenham Hotspurs. Tottenham were unbeaten, flying this season, top of the league at one point coming into this weekend, and everything was just set up for them to steamroll us, and even they get the early goal. I'm looking at some of their influencers, some of their fans. Everyone's just expecting them to beat us today, and it's just so Chelsea like that when the odds are against us, like Feroz knows, against all odds. When everything is against us, we just somehow find a way. But no way did anyone imagine the way this game would unfold. But Feroz, coming into this game, what were your thoughts? Did you expect us to win? Did you expect us to get a result?
I honestly, despite obviously the youngsters we have and change of mentality, with the new manager and everything, just happens every few seasons. But I am really optimistic when it comes to these sort of games. When we are totally against it, and as much as I dislike Spurs, they were like top of the league slash second now, I guess, but they were up there, and you got to give them the respect in terms of how they've conducted themselves this season, the way they're playing, and when we play against the, as I said, I hate saying it, the big teams, we do really well. And we saw that against Liverpool, Arsenal, and I was expecting a similar thing today. And obviously, when we conceded, that's when I was like, oh, maybe my optimism is kicking in. Maybe I should be more realistic, but of course, Chelsea just did the most Chelsea thing, despite obviously the turning points of the game. But we got the win 4-1, and that's what mattered the most.
Yeah, look, when we've said this in the past, we've said it this season. Sometimes performances don't matter. You just have to get the result. And in a game like this, where form goes out of the window, anybody can beat anybody in this league. It just felt like one of those things where Chelsea could get it done, but like you said, going down a goal early, you're suddenly like, I don't know about this Chelsea side because we've seen it in the past where we go a goal down, we try to come back, and we get hit on the counter, and that's it. And actually, that did happen because Son did get a second one. VAR in its first intervention in that case pulled it back, luckily for us, when rightly so. And then from maybe that point on, there was a slight transition, and then there's a Udogi foul, which I'll bring you in here. Was that a red card for you? The first one, the one
Yes.
that was.
Um, I was so emotionally invested in this game, and I've been so vocal about just officiating and referees in general. So for me, when these incidents happen, especially in real time, right, it's so hard to assess it. But I was adamant it was a red card, and then in hindsight, I was trying to figure out, like he barely touched him or he didn't touch him at all. So I could understand it, but then after like watching more videos, now I'm convinced that it should be a red card because going by the law, and usually these are the challenges people get sent off for because that was atrocious. Going 2-footed like that, studs up, like both his feet off the ground. I think if if it was given, it wouldn't have been one of those surprising things. It should be more likely to be given than not, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and as Chelsea fans, we look at it and we go, Malagusto was sent off a month or so ago for something. I mean, he didn't go into it as aggressively as Udogi did, but he
Yeah.
did get the red card. And I think Udogi gets lucky because Sterling almost pulls out of it. If
Yeah.
Sterling
Oh,
leaves his foot in there, that could have been a whole different.
100%. 100%.
Yeah, and Sterling could be looking at a serious injury. So I think they got lucky there. And then Christian Romero, Feroz, is a player that I'm not a big fan of. I think he sometimes was too aggressive. If I'm not wrong, he was the one who pulled Cucurella's hair last season at
Oh
the
wow.
bridge, at the game at the bridge, and he got away with it. And he's just had that moments in his career where he's been a little too aggressive. And he gets away with another one here in this game, in that first half, where he kicks out at, I think it was Levi Colwell. And again, for me, VAR looks at it and they say, no, this is not a red card. And I don't know what they were thinking.
Yeah, no, same thing. I stand like by that as well. Because I was watching Gary Neville's commentary as well right now, and he was so surprised at both decisions. Where when they were doing the review, he's like, "Oh, they're in trouble," and then when they weren't, he was like, What is going on?" Right? Because it comes to a point where the officials are overthinking everything, second guessing everything, which is why obviously all the goals that even were legit, they were making sure 100%, which is why I am so surprised that they took probably like 10 minutes, 10-15 minutes with that whole Enzo Fernandez penalty situation, right? Romero, and then the disallowed goal of Nico Jackson, right? The first one, it's so confusing because it took so long, and
Yeah.
yet for the Sterling one also, when Sterling scored, they took so long for the handball, and they didn't even address it. That was so weird how they didn't address it. It's bizarre. It's so bizarre how that wasn't a red card. But for sure, for me, like 100%, that kick out on Levi was just clear red. That was exactly what happened with Beckham in the World Cup.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's funny you bring that up because I just watched that Beckham documentary,
Oh,
and there was no VAR in those days, and the referees got it. So
yeah.
yeah, look, Romero is a player that is always looking to have that extra edge against his opponents and get away with things, and he did, and I think that kind of fueled the fire within him because he was like, well, got away once, let me see how far I can get, and I'll come into that what you were talking about with the almost career-ending tackle on Enzo, his teammate from Argentina. But even before that, I think we were growing into the game at this
Mhm.
point. We were almost using the energy that was within the stadium and
Yeah.
some of the decisions that had gone against us because at that point Sterling's goal had been called off, like you've pointed out,
Mhm.
and so we were kind of coming into it.
Yeah.
Tottenham were building off of the energy that was in the stadium,
Yeah.
and before I go into that Enzo and Romero tackle, do you think Tottenham fans and players and maybe even the management built this game up so much because they played almost 10 days ago at this point?
Yeah.
They played Crystal Palace on a Friday night. Their next game is Chelsea on a Monday night. They've had a long time to think about this game and put the energy in the end. And do you think they built it up a little too much? And even coming out of into this game, they just wanted to break Chelsea.
Yeah, I wouldn't say so just because of the fact that this is Tottenham. They always do this, right? Obviously, a few years ago with the Battle of the Bridge, when they arguably should have had like 2 3 red cards at the minimum. So they always have that in them, that feeling, that inner Spurs thing that they always do. Obviously, my bias is kicking it right now. I'm just glad today they lost their cool after the first goal. They totally obviously Son scored as well, which was correctly offside as given, but they definitely lost their cool, and I feel like that sort of lifted the players more, like Chelsea players. And Poch in his post match presser said that he felt like the players were really nervous, but then when we conceded, they're like, all right, let's just play football right now, and we finally did that, and we're coming closer and closer. After Spurs scored first, Chelsea had 6 shots and Spurs had 0. We were just attacking, and it was just a matter of time. I'm seeing a lot of love for Spurs, which we can talk about it towards the
We'll
end.
get to,
Yeah,
yes,
of
yes.
course, but it's just funny how people are forgetting that even when it was 1-0, we were just getting back, and we got back. And even when it was 1-1, we were just dominating, I feel.
Yeah, no, totally. And we've pointed out Raheem Sterling's goal that was called off. That could have made it 1-1.
Of course.
Moises Caicedo, who scores from all the craziness that happens, could have made it
Oh,
2-1.
yeah.
And so let's get into that craziness. Raheem
Mhm,
Sterling's dribbling the ball into the box.
mhm.
Van de Ven comes in and tries to swipe him out. The ball falls to Enzo, in which case Romero goes in full blooded, catches him. And in the moment, Feroze, when I'm watching this live,
Yeah.
I honestly didn't catch what happened
Okay.
with Romero and Enzo. I see Enzo go down, but I'm more focused on why aren't we getting a shot off here?
Yeah.
Why are we trying to pass it around? Ultimately, we get the shot off. It goes in. Caicedo scores. I'm celebrating in the office very quietly. Um, and then it gets called off. But to VAR's credit, they
Yes.
went back and looked not just at the goal,
Yeah.
but the last two or three plays
Yes.
that were leading
Yes.
up to it. And I got to give them credit because we've been very critical of them. We've said
Of course.
they don't do a good job or they're not consistent. But in this case, not only do they take our goal away, but then they gave us an opportunity to score with the penalty and send Romero off, which again thought was the right decision.
Uh,
And up steps Cold Palmer. What have you made of Cold Palmer coming in? It's now been 5, 6, 7 games he started, and we've lost one and won or drawn the rest of them.
he is unbelievable. It's sort of weird. It may be in a bizarre way a blessing in disguise and Cuckoo's injury. Maybe if this Palmer like reaches the heights that I think he is going to, I feel like a lot of people were criticizing the deadline day transfers with like they were like why the names we were linked with, right? Obviously Musiala and some crazy links were being discussed, and then of course when we got Palmer, a lot of Chelsea fans were like why him, but I'm usually optimistic, and especially with what he did at City, right? Playing as many minutes as he could and shining. He did against Arsenal for City. He scored a spectacular goal, and just going by highlights. Obviously, highlights can be deceiving, but he just had that it factor. Obviously, still early days, but he has just been sensational. And as you said, ice cold, and he's done this time and time again, being responsible. And even his post match interview was so good. He's so mature. He's just saying, "No, Nico's got to work harder, and so have I. Like this is not like just we shouldn't be content with winning 4-1 like this. We deserve more. We are gonna like do more." And I'm just really excited for the kid and just for the future of this club.
Yeah, he seems like a experienced player in a 21-year-old's body
Yeah.
because you said a post match interview he gave, but even outside of that, you see him on the pitch, the way he
Oh,
carries himself. He scores a goal and he shushes the fans. But that's honestly the first time I've seen him show emotion.
mhm.
Not that he doesn't have emotions or he doesn't care, uh, but I think he's just very focused on the task, on the job. Let's move on to the next thing. Let's not over celebrate. Let's not indulge too much here because there's a bigger test coming. And for a 21-year-old to do all of that, he's almost quietly a leader within a squad that he's just come into. And I'm excited to see him because, like you said, I looking at it on deadline day, I was like, who,
Yeah.
why are we paying that much?
Mhm.
Um, but clearly the club had a plan, and you got to give credit to him and to Poch for integrating him into the side. So 1-1, Tottenham down to 10, and I'm looking at this and I'm like, we really should be now looking to win this. Now I'm not trying to get too far ahead of myself, but I'm like, this is an opportunity here.
Mhm.
Again, Tottenham doing what they do at home, playing on the front foot. We were still in control. I think we started to get further in control from this point on. Nico Jackson, Feroze, a player you and I watched in preseason, a player we're excited by in preseason. He's come in, started the season hit and miss. First half, Nico Jackson, what did you make of him?
I felt like he was unlucky slash selfish because he could have played Gallagher, obviously like a tap in, but that was a good save. You got to give credit to the keeper, the Spurs keeper, in the first half as well. That was a decent save, and I was just frustrated because obviously the bright start Nico Jackson had in preseason, and just it just seemed like things were clicking. But then, of course, and Kuku's injury sort of hampered everything because that led to like a change of system with Cole playing left back, and then that just caused a lot of like commotion. And I feel like with Nico's injury as well, that didn't help him. So I'm pleased with how it ended, but the first time I was sort of frustrated. I kept my cool because obviously we all can go on X/Twitter, just go and just lose it. But I was just like, nah, it's fine. Let's just stay composed because we can't do anything until January besides play him or obviously Broya slash Palmer as a false nine. These are the only options until the January window. So you got to just stick with what we have.
Yeah, and were you surprised? Because I honestly thought in this game Poch might go
Yeah.
with the lineup that we went with Arsenal, where
Yes.
Palmer played as that
Hmm.
false nine, but also helped out in midfield. So when I saw Nico Jackson start, I was a
Yeah.
little surprised. Were you?
Yeah, I really was surprised that Mudryk, obviously he's coming back from injury, was dropped. I thought
Right.
Palmer would start along with Mudryk and Jackson would be on the bench.
Yeah, but at least at the end of the first half, I was like, yeah, I don't know if that was the right decision, but football is a 90-minute game, and or in this case, a 115-minute game. Um, and that changed. All right, so second half, Cucurella comes on. You briefly touched on Colwell playing left back. Is this an experiment of Colwell playing left back that needs to kind of end here?
I think so. As good as of a passer he is, I think playing in his natural position as a center back will benefit him, will benefit us. And Kuko, to his credit, has shut me up. I was really critical of him before. This season, he's done exceptionally well whenever he's been called for. And, despite Chile's injury, he stepped up. So hats off. And I think we should really stick with this current situation now with, like, obviously not Palmer, Koval as a left back. I don't think that works out.
Yeah, I agree with you, and honestly, in the first 20 minutes, I was like, this needs to end now, not even let's wait till halftime. I don't think the reason he was pulled off was because Pochettino sees it the way we do. It was more to do with emotion, and I got to
Yeah.
give credit to Pochettino because Colwell was fired up towards the end of that first
Yes.
half, picked up a yellow, and could have easily picked up a second or even a red. So credit to Pochettino for seeing that. But we go into the second half and still down to 10 Tottenham. Udogi. Uh, it's actually a 3-on-2 counter. Chelsea
Yes.
are on the counter. First question: did you think Sterling was going to pass to Jackson?
Okay, so here is this thing because this is such a this is such a complicated situation because I want to talk about going back to the penalty incident. Now I have a question.
Yeah,
Let's say the goal is counted, right? Caicedo's goal is counted.
yeah.
Do you think a red card would have been given or no?
Do you know what
Because,
I
because in this situation, it's like Chelsea made two mistakes or two things that have gone against us, which for me, Sterling should have made the obvious pass to Jackson. He didn't, and that resulted in another red card. So I thought two decisions that we didn't like had in our favor, worked in our favor because of it's just Carragher said it wouldn't have like counted as in the red card wouldn't have been given for the penalty. If the penalty,
if Caicedo's goals, yeah,
if Caicedo's goal was there, then red card wouldn't have happened. And I think I agree with that, which is bizarre how football works, right? But to
yeah.
answer your question, I thought Sterling would pass, but to Nico.
Yeah, no, look, and to come back to answer your question, I'm almost if you had asked me before this game and if something like this had happened, I would have said no because I don't think VAR goes back and looks at it. But it was violent. It was a dangerous tackle. And I think at that point, that is the
True.
point of VAR to be there to correct these kind of things, even if a goal has been scored. So I would think, and maybe I'm giving them too much credit, I would think that they would go back, but I don't know. And yeah,
But
to come to the second red card, it is strange because Udogi wins the ball. I'm frustrated. I'm like, why are we passing to Palmer? Why aren't we going for Nico or even trying to shoot himself in the event of um, surprising the opposition? But then Udogi flies into a tackle on, I think it was on Sterling.
yes,
Um, and that creates a second opportunity, which it's just funny how things work. And I think you were alluding to the same point. Did did Udogi just still with the energy and with what was happening?
I just think honestly this was karma. Simple. Both players that got sent out should have been sent out before. Simple as that.
Before, true.
Yeah. Both of these guys did the stupidest thing earlier, and they got sent out rightfully so. Which is why I'm like, all right, these two players, yeah, they should have gone a while back, and thankfully, justice prevailed.
Yeah, justice did prevail, and
Mhm.
Udogi is off now, and we're playing against 9 men,
Oh, this is
and
scary.
it's 1-1, and it's I think 55 or 57
You
minutes or
know,
something like that.
before you say anything, I want to address something. So, one reason why I was sort of confident about this game is because when we play against the big teams, they play a high line, right? Now with 10 men, Spurs were playing a high line, and I was like, this is bizarre. With 9 men, this is when I was like, this is not good. This is not good for Chelsea. I
Yeah,
said this to myself. Forget pressure, forget Chelsea has to win with 9. This is not good because any team with some common sense would sit back especially against a club that struggles, right? When
against
this is
yes.
back. But when you saw what happened, it's crazy. It's crazy.
No, and you I was going to come to that too. So 55, 57 minutes, whatever it was, 9 men, Tottenham. And honestly, I thought the same thing at halftime that they're going to go in, reassess, and say, you know what, let's just drop deeper. Let's not give them the space. And that didn't happen. It didn't happen even when they went down to 9. But I think that surprised us a little bit because it took us some time to settle into we're going to have most of the ball. We're going to be able to run in behind. We have to stay on side. Basically, the game was being played between the halfway
Yep.
um, and our midfield.
Yeah.
And every time we would try to get in behind, we were just offside. And I'm like, what are we doing? It's not that difficult to time it. But in the moment you think about it, it is difficult because you're trying to make a run in. The defender sees you coming. All they have to do is step up. And it's difficult for players to get in. But ultimately, we did 20 or so minutes later. In the 75th minute, Sterling gets in. What was funny was the only reason Nico Jackson is ahead or gets in
He did
position
the
to
one
put
before.
that ball is because he was offside if the ball was played to him.
Yes.
Um, but he puts the ball in the back of the net 2-1. And I'm like, all right, finally, we have this goal.
Mhm.
Um, let's just kill it now. And as soon as I say that, I look at Dyer put the ball in the back of our net, and I'm like, what just happened? And even on that, Feroze, VR took the longest time because
Oh,
the
yes. Yeah,
commentators were saying,
I have to be sure.
oh, they think it's a lot closer than it is. And I'm like, I see it's offside. What did you make of that whole drama?
No, for me, the same thing. The second we scored and took the lead, I tweeted, "I am not confident. We are gonna we are gonna do something really stupid and silly, just a lot of silly things." And of course, right after we score, we just give reckless fouls for no reason whatsoever. Whether it's Cole Palmer, right? Whether it's Malagusto,
Gusto,
it's
yeah.
like no, have it. And of course, when Dyer scores that, I'm like, all right. And the fact that they were taking 50 years for that decision, I'm like, they're gonna give
Yeah.
it. They're
I was
gonna give
scared. I was scared. I honestly thought they were going to give it and find some way to be like it
it.
flicked off Silva's head. But it didn't happen. 2-1, and even at 2-1 for us, I was like, we should kill this, but we should be smart about it because we shouldn't be giving them opportunities
Of course.
to come back into it. And honestly, they had a couple more. I think Son had one, and I got to give credit to Sanchez, who have been very critical of. He pulls
Yeah.
off a good save. Bentancur had one.
Oh, Bentancur's won the bounce. Oh my
Um,
god, bro. This could have easily been 2-2, 3-2. Like the
yeah,
fact
it
that
was it was wild.
yeah,
It was wild, but ultimately, Nico Jackson again makes it 3-1, makes it 4-1, could have made it 5-1.
should have.
um, and we win this game. We win this game 4-1. We get the
Mm.
3 points. We end their run, 3 point lane once again. Overall, Feroz, and I come back to a tweet you put out, which was at the end or towards the end, which was we're winning 4-1 away to Spurs, and somehow I'm still not satisfied, or something along those lines. What were your thoughts with that tweet?
I cannot believe I would ever in a million years say something like this, but I stand by this. Any clinical team, right, would win this game by at least like 7 8 goals, at least. And I get it, pressure and all, but it's the basics, right? The basics when it's 2-on-1, square it. I get it for the hat trick. That was the only exception where I'm like, Nico, fair enough, don't pass it to Mudryk. But what Cucurella did as well, he cut in, sure, just square it. It's a tap in, right? It's a simple tap in, and just some of the runs that we were making, and obviously their goalkeeper had a blinder. Their
He did.
goalkeeper, whoa. Like
He
obviously,
wasn't even a goalie at one point. He was just like a deep defender.
yes, it was so crazy. I generally think that if it was a clinical team, they would have just destroyed Spurs and the situation, because it wasn't a team that's, as I mentioned earlier, 9 players, but they're all back. No. This is super high, half the line. It was just us with the half the line. That's
Halfway,
what it
yeah.
was, right? And we have
Yeah.
these attacking players, and just us not being clinical frustrated me, and which is why obviously Jackson scored 3, but he could have easily had like 7, 8, easy, right? So that's
Yeah.
frustrating. But a win is a win, and 4-1 away, Spurs. I mean, I shouldn't complain, but hey, it was surprising because I'm always optimistic. But this was one, as Carragher said earlier, this one of the most bizarre football games he's watched in the last like 2 years.
It definitely was bizarre. And if you look at just our performance,
Yeah.
I would say it was a 5 out of 10. It was average. We weren't
Yep.
we weren't up for it, which is strange because it's a London derby and it's a team that in at least the recent history, it's been feisty.
Yeah.
Pochettino is going back home, and Spurs honestly just looked like they wanted to kill this game in the first 20 minutes.
Hmm.
And if that would have happened, they I think, would have gone on and scored maybe 5 or 6.
Of course.
But I think the word you use, clinical, is key here because Chelsea are not clinical. Chelsea do need 10 opportunities to maybe get 2 goals. And that's something that needs to change over the course of this season. But as we go on to the next few weeks, where we have tougher tests coming up with the Man City, and then we have Brighton and United, and not all of these games are going to go this way with the way the referees' decisions and VAR worked out. But it's a confidence booster. It's a booster in the sense that, yeah, performance wasn't great, but we walk away with 3 points. We walk away with our first major win of the season against a top side. I think the stat was we hadn't beaten any of the top 6 teams last season, apart from Villa, or even top 8 or something like that. And this season we've already done that. So there's something to build on, but we need to build on this now. We can't just sit on it and be like, yeah, we beat Tottenham away. And it doesn't get any bigger than City.
Mhm.
But let's just talk about Pochettino for a second. What does he look at this game and think that went well for us?
I mentioned this earlier on a few streams and podcasts, that this game, you cannot assess this game. This was a crazy one-off game. Even with all due respect to Nico's hat trick, you got to just assess this as a bizarre. It's like a write-off almost. That's what it seems. Which is why, in hindsight, going by the analysis as well, I was sort of thinking to myself, maybe I shouldn't be this critical, because the players, they've trained the entire week / the entire season, but they would have never in a million years trained for something like this. Such a high line with 9 players. Should we be patient, or should we just give a lot of true? It was so crazy. The only frustration is obviously us now finishing our chances, which is what mattered the most. And thankfully, we did that towards the end. But I think Poch should just sort of be cautious. The fact that we have a lot of inexperienced players, that in these sort of moments you need experience. You need Thiago Silva, and obviously like other like senior players to step in, right? And I feel like that's what's going to matter the most, because against Arsenal, that was a turning point, right? Where we just sort of gave the game away, and we just got to be more brave, be more clinical, and obviously with Nkunku and all these players slowly returning, it's going to be a lot better. And I feel like we should just take things step by step and not like get too ahead of ourselves, because the score line is just that, right? But at the same
Right.
time, we got to be realistic. We are not a clinical team, and that it showed that today as well. It showed. Even though it was 4-1, it showed we're not clinical. Bizarre. Bizarre.
Definitely bizarre, and I think you're right. It is a game that you can't dwell on for too long because you're not going to be playing against nine that high every game or every week. But when you are, you need to be clinical, like you said, and it's not just in this game. We need to be clinical throughout the whole season. When we get our chances, we need to put them away. Um, Easier said than done, but it's headed in the right direction.
Mhm.
We've spoken about the high line. We've spoken about how aggressive Tottenham were, even with two men down. Uh, and Postecoglou came out and said, "This is who we are. This is how we'd play, even if we were at five." Do you think he's being a little arrogant?
Really, really. You know what? I never thought I'd say this. I actually like Ange, and I never thought I would say this about a Tottenham manager. Obviously, with Poch, it's different. With Ange, it's really like people liked his post-match interview. I just felt like it's really stupid and bizarre, right?
Yeah.
You shouldn't have an ego like that. Where even if you have five players, I would play. Come on, with when it was 1-1 for when you are I don't know, when you are losing and giving chances every few seconds and your goalkeeper has to bail you out and Chelsea just being atrocious in terms of finishing and you still just do that, that's just being arrogant. I feel like that was really stupid and I'm glad we figured it out at the end. It was a long time, but I'm just glad like that sort of like was sorted, but I think that was somewhat arrogant.
Was it also disrespectful to Chelsea? Because just think about it for a second. Would you be doing the same against Liverpool, Man City, Arsenal? Because you know their attack is a lot more
It's
clinical.
it's weird because I would say yes, it is disrespectful, but the score line could have easily been different, right? So
Yeah.
it almost was it almost worked out. If he would have taken a chances, it would have been like, hey. But in a bizarre way, he has that in him to say, even though it finished 4-1, there's a reason why I did this because it's against like Chelsea and they just cannot finish for life, right? That's the thing. So it frustrates me. It really does because on one hand I'm like 4-1, and on the other end I'm like we wasted so many chances, and not just as you mentioned, not just today, this entire season, which is why he's like we can take the risk against these guys. I mean we're 10th, right? Let's not kid ourselves.
Yeah, and to support that, we had 17 shots in total, 8 on target, and Tottenham 9 men down, down to 9 men had 8 shots, 5 on target. So,
Oh dear God.
and you can break it up and be like, sure, most of those came earlier in the game, and Chelsea were more attacking later on. Overall, on paper, when you look at the stats, they suggest that Tottenham should have maybe had at least another goal, and that's a little scary for Chelsea because we should have just controlled that game. But again, a young squad, a team that's just come together under Pochettino. We're still evolving. This is a result that we can use to build on. So let's talk about building on it. We've got Man City on the weekend, who will also be playing a little more expansive and open than some of the other teams that we've fallen against. What are your thoughts against this at home? This or not even this season, this year, or the last 18 months, we've just not been good. Is this an opportunity to put things right at home?
Yeah, because obviously against the big teams we do tend to step up. But my only concern is these young players just having uh having an advantage, right? Whether it's a lead or 10, just and not sticking through. I'm not confident in this defense. I just feel like we're just too immature. We need some sort of like stability, which is why this game is huge. Because mentally, if we climb that hurdle, right, of not losing against Liverpool, Arsenal, obviously beating Spurs. I'm going to say demolish Spurs, and then getting any result against City will be huge. But I just feel like it's one of the most important games. But at the same time, in a bizarre, you can look at it as a free hit, right? Where if you lose, it's like anyone. City would arguably beat
It's City,
anyone,
yeah.
right? Yeah, they would beat anyone. And then if we win or draw, hey, we did our bit, and we are sort of like building momentum.
Yeah, and coming into this run at the start of this international or at the end of the last international break, which was a couple of weeks ago, we had Arsenal, we had Brentford, we had Tottenham, we had
Mhm.
City. And at this point, we won one, drawn one, lost one. And if you told me we'd lose to Brentford, I probably would have said you're probably right. And so City now presents an opportunity where we could go and maybe pick up a second win and close this period with 2 wins, a draw, and a loss versus coming into it where people were like, Chelsea are just going to lose all 4. They're not going to pick up a win till December. It changes the narrative and the feeling around the club. Let's talk about starting 11. So Sanchez in goal. I think that's a given. Reece back at right back.
100%. Yeah.
Do you think it was planned to take him off as soon as we got that second goal today?
Yeah, from what I understand, like the next, well, not anymore, but for today it was same thing, 60, 65 minutes.
Right.
But it's not just 60, 65. He played an additional like 10 because of obviously the added time and stuff. So the second we got the goal, he had to come off because you have to manage him perfectly, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. No, I was, apart from winning this game, I was glad he got through with, like you said, the 12 minutes at the end of the first half and then another 35 or so in the second. So reset right back. Who are your center backs? Thiago, I think, is an obvious choice, but Disasi, Colwell.
Oof, I would pick Colwell as a center back as well. What about you?
I would pick Colwell too, but I feel like he just prefers to have Disasi in there for some reason or the other. Mm-hmm. And now I'm thinking about City, and I don't know if Haaland is going to be available. I do know he picked up
Badiashile injured? Badiashile is injured or no?
No, he's back. He played against Blackburn, right?
Yeah, I I prefer him over Disasi. I don't know, obviously his fitness.
Yeah,
I actually, even though I like Disasi, I rate obviously Benoit more.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah, so I would play Levi, but I would not be surprised if we see both Levi along with Badiashile or Disasi. I think
so that means Thiago doesn't play.
No, I think Cuckoo is not going to start against City.
That was going to be my next question about left back. So you and I said Cuckoo should be starting, but you think Pochettino is going to continue?
Well, then again, I'm trying to figure out how City are going to line up.
Yeah, so I'll tell you who played for them in their 6-1 win against Bournemouth last weekend. So they had Bernardo Silva, Julian Alvarez, and Haaland as the front 3. Okay. And then they had Kyle Walker and Doku as wing backs.
No, you know what? This is, who's going to mark Doku? Oh, because I think Doku plays right wing, right?
Yeah.
Would you rather have Cuckoo or Colwell? This is tricky.
Yeah, it is tricky.
Because Cuckoo overcommits, but Levi doesn't come in enough.
I think Levi will play this game as a left back.
Okay, all right. I can see that as well. But it's Joku is very direct, and you need, because obviously Cuckoo worked against Saka.
Yeah.
So I mean, but then again, Cuckoo can overcommit, and they could sort of like bite us back,
Yeah, and Levi played against Salah the first game, and maybe the first 15-20 minutes he was a little shaky, but then he kind of got calmed down and kept him quiet. So yeah, it's going to be interesting, but I do think it will be Reece, Disasi, Thiago, and Colwell. Midfield, I think it's pretty obvious. Caicedo, Enzo.
Enzo had a horrible game. With all
let's talk about that.
It was due. He was due a really bad game, but he had a really bad. I feel like obviously the fouls weren't helping him and stuff, and he needs a goal. He needs a goal badly to get his confidence up. But it's fine. He's done enough good to deserve like 1 or 2 off games.
Yeah, and I'm not making an excuse for him, but I do know he's had a newborn baby maybe 10 days ago at this point. So that could be something that's on his mind and keeping him up at night. I'm not making excuses. I don't know this to be true. But maybe there are other things happening off the pitch that are impacting his performances. But to which I would say then that's a question for Pochettino and even for Enzo. Does he need to be playing from the start? Because we need someone that's 100% on the pitch, ready to go. And I'm not doubting his ability or his commitment, but when you have things happening, you maybe some time off is better. Um, but yes, I agree. He needs a goal. He needs to do
Yeah,
justice to that number 8 shirt. And every time he shoots, I'm like, what is going on?
it's ridiculous because before he signed for the club, he scored some. There are like 10 screamers he scored.
Yeah,
In his career, and
yeah.
he could shoot. It's just I don't know. I just hope it's not the Kovacic syndrome. No, and we move
Yeah,
on
I
from
hear
that.
you. But so okay, Caicedo, Enzo, I think Conor Gallagher plays as well.
Yeah, he has to.
How impressed have you been with Connor this
I
season in general?
I really like him. I've never been against him, and I feel like when people were discussing, oh, he should be sold and stuff, I was a sort of understanding. Okay, fair enough. We have obviously a lot of people forgetting we still have Lavia who has to come
Yeah.
back. So when, and Cuckoo as well, right? When he returns, I think he will probably take up the number 10 role. It's just weird. So I think that he has shut a lot of people up, and I'm glad he has. He deserves it. Obviously, there are moments where he's go like, "Why is he doing this?" But at least he's showing that he cares for the club, which is what matters the most for me, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And actually I'm just trying to look up how old he is. And he's 23 for Rose. So
Yeah.
sometimes when people question him or why is he doing this or why is he doing he's still a young guy.
I still think he is gonna leave. Unfortunately, I don't want him to. I hope it's not January. And there
Yeah.
was talk about Spurs, right? There was actual talk about
Yeah.
Spurs. So I would be gutted if he leaves, but I'd understand it if Lavia and all these players come back. But he's done really well, and he could be that somewhat connector between
Yeah.
obviously Enzo and Caicedo. But today it just didn't work that the three pairing. But I feel like we should give him a lot of love because he deserves it.
He definitely does, and it would be strange if we let him go mid-season
Yeah,
because Pochettino trusts him. Lavia is still to come back, and injuries can always pop up, as we
of
know as
course.
Chelsea fans. So, um, I agree. I think we should keep Connor at least till the summer, and if not even beyond that. So we have a midfield of Connor, Enzo, and Caicedo. Let's move to the front three. I
Oh,
believe Cole
this is
Palmer plays.
yes, this is so
Raheem
tough.
Sterling.
Yeah, Sterling has to play. Has to.
We
It's
need.
Mudryk today was really bad, but it's fine because it was one of the weirdest, strangest games because he's the best when he run at defenders, but this wasn't a game to run. It was a game where you have to pass it to the players, right?
Right.
And then you can talk about obviously the Jackson situation because he scored three, but then if Jackson would have passed it to Mudryk, he would have had a goal. So this is a really 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 weird one because against City, I think Mudryk will shine, but we need to start with Jackson, Sterling, Palmer as a trio. I
As a
feel.
trio. I agree
Yeah.
with you. Let's talk about Sterling because you and I in the past have been. And you're laughing because he's our favorite player, and I say favorite in quotes.
Of course.
Um, but he's been good this season. Maybe a game or two here and there. We've not seen what we expect, but apart from that, even today,
Yeah.
he was
He just
attracting players and doing making things happen.
of course he always contributes and gets the goal or an assist. He just does it, right? It may not look the best, but he just does it. And obviously he had a goal ruled out too. But that's when I was
Right.
like, wow, this is what we need, right? We need players to take on defenders and just go and get lucky and score, right? And he has done that, and I feel like he definitely deserves to start against his former club. Obviously, when he joined, he had a great start, and then just like the club in general, were just very stale, and I feel like that affected him. But now I think slowly he's getting back, and it'll be good to have competition for obviously Mudryk and then probably Nkuku and the rest as well. And let's not
Yeah.
forget Nani, right? Like Nani last season was our bright spark, and now that conversation isn't even happening anymore, right?
Yeah. It's Nani almost has to now step up and fight for his place back,
Yeah.
which is tough because he's going up against Raheem, Cole Palmer, and then there's Mudryk and Nkunku's coming. So it's a tough situation.
Nani's situation reminds me a lot of Ziyech.
Yeah,
Like he'll just start a random game here and there, and then
yeah,
when he does, he'll hit the post or do something crazy. But then people talk about his like off the pitch stuff, or in terms of like him not fitting the right system, and then him showing signs of like getting past everyone and then doing well for the national team, and then he doesn't get like discussed often. I just hope he just sorts this out. Because if I'm not mistaken, when he was at Spurs, Pochettino was in charge. I think he was the one who let him go. I don't know. I could be wrong, but maybe that could be a factor, right?
yeah. I seriously hope not, and I'm actually looking this up as we
Because
as
if
we
that's the
speak.
case, then you don't forget those youth players or the young players that you have, and you go like, oh, yeah, of course, I remember I coached him, and I sort of told him. I don't know.
Yeah, so his youth career, he was at Tottenham from 2014 to 2018. So I think you're right. He may have overlapped with Pochettino at Spurs for maybe a year or two.
Hmm.
Um, so there might be some history there.
Oh no.
All right, for us, prediction time. Man City visiting Chelsea at the Bridge. We've picked our 11. How do you see this one going?
I see it as 2-2.
2-2 again at home against a big team.
Mhm.
Um,
And I see us taking the lead, like winning 2-1, 2 minutes to go and City equalize, something like that. Like a heartbreak 2-2. Not even
don't.
a not even a oh wow we came back. No, it'll be like a heartbreak 2-2 last minute, some corner something, and we go like, all right, at least we got our results. What about
Haven't
you?
we had enough heart or drama this week?
What do you think?
I, I mean, it's difficult to look past City,
Yeah.
but City are City, and they always come up against Chelsea, and Chelsea find a way to win. And we haven't beaten them since Porto, where we beat them 1-0. So we're due a win. It almost feels like after tonight and coming to this weekend, we should get it done. So I will go for a 1-0.
Wow.
Scrappy. I don't care how we win as long as we win
Clean
this
sheet
game.
against Holland again. Wow. Okay. I mean,
Well, he might be injured, so
apparently today he started training again. Unfortunately.
of course he did.
Yeah.
Let's see. Let's see. Holland. Yeah,
I heard
plays
he got.
down Holland injury. Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll change my prediction.
I mean, he still hasn't scored against us, but
That's right.
yeah,
That's
I
right.
don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. As long as we win, even if we draw, that's fine. I just don't want to lose. I want to stay in
You
the
just
top half.
you just know there are gonna be a few controversial calls. You just know it. It's obvious. These refs.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's on Chelsea. Feroze, any other teams this season you've been impressed with, you've enjoyed watching before we wrap up the episode?
I was going to say Spurs. They really surprised before the season. The fact that they lost Harry Kane, I cannot believe I'm complimenting Spurs, but not believe, even though today I don't like his press conference or his interview. I became a fan of Ange. I feel like he's conducted himself really well, usually, and just losing arguably the greatest striker, right, in the world, arguably him and Holland, and I guess Nico. uh, I feel like that really surprised me. But it just goes to show, right? When you lose your star players, when Hazard left, right? When Coutinho left Liverpool, and then
Right.
obviously like Kane left, like these teams tend to build a team rather than just focusing on an individual and then just go and perform. But I think Spurs really surprised me. I didn't even think they would be in the top six race, let alone being in the top six slash being top 1/2, and they have really shut me up. So they have impressed me a lot. Never imagined them.
Yeah. I mean, they were a shock with
Yeah.
being top of the table and
Yeah.
under a new manager, scoring freely. But Spurs do what Spurs do and lose to Chelsea.
Three
So
point lead.
I'll take that. Um, any parting thoughts for Rose before we wrap this up?
I'm just glad we won because I was having flashbacks in this, I'd say like 60th minute. Like, okay, I know where this is heading. I just could set this one goal in the last minute and us losing, not even drawing, losing. But a draw would have been a disaster as well for me, especially after
Yeah,
the Arsenal game, especially after all, like 2 red cards. We would have been a joke. So I'm just glad we got a result. I'm glad I could do this podcast. I'm just glad things worked out, right? And you got a hat trick. It's bizarre. It's bizarre.
it is bizarre, and I'm glad we could make this work too.
Mhm.
And I'm hoping that we can get a win this weekend and go into the international break with some good positivity and feeling around the club, because once we come back, it's a crazy end to November and then December starts.
Mhm.
Um, Final question for you, Feroze. We're in the quarterfinals of the Carabao Cup. Can we go all the way?
Oh, hi. Yeah,
With the
yes.
teams remaining, we play
You know what?
Newcastle. If
I'll say this. I'll say this. The winner of Newcastle Chelsea will win the whole thing. Not Liverpool are still in it, right?
Liverpool play West
Yeah,
Ham
no,
at home, yeah.
I still think the winner of Chelsea Newcastle will win the whole thing. And I think I'm leaning towards Chelsea, but I'm scared of Newcastle. That's me being like totally honest and raw.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm scared of Newcastle too, but my only hope is by the time that game comes around, they would have had Champions League, they would have had multiple Premier League games, and we're kind of just focused on these two competitions. So
But do you think by the time you play them, Reese will be fit? No. I'm not gonna put it out there. I'm messing. I agree with you. I think there's gonna be
if
a lot of games for them, and we will sort of like have an advantage over them in that aspect.
even if he's fit, there's no guarantee Poch plays him, because Gusto has been a good backup or a good option. So midweek
I
game, you
agree.
never know.
But when he made that tackle today, I was losing my I was just losing it when Gusto made that tackle. I'm like, are you like that could have gone so south? I'm glad it worked
He'll
out.
learn from it. He'll
Yeah.
learn from it. But thanks for joining me, for Rose. That wraps it up, guys. Thank you very much for listening. Please continue to subscribe, like, and follow us at the Premier Chelsea on all podcast providers, Instagram, and on X or Twitter. It's at Premier Chelsea, and you can obviously, if you don't already, please follow Feroze 17. And we will be back with a new episode. But until then, stay safe and up.